Anyone remember this game from your childhood? Well, you should. Skylanders was a cultural phenomenon, raising the Toys to Life market to new heights. Releasing in 2010, Skylanders Spyro Adventure released with the intention of it being a mature Spyro game, with blood and a much darker tone. You know, why the hell did we not get that? That would have been sick. However, instead the game was turned into the Toys to Life concept that we all love so dearly, after they realized that taking a cartoon character and making a game like Doom 3 out of it wasn't exactly the greatest idea. And so, Toys for Bob decided to make Skylanders Spyro Adventure, and ended up having modest success, but no good concept comes without a few competitors trying to follow suit. But for those competitors, they couldn't really shine a light to the king that is Activision and their new concept, except Disney, because of course they would. Nowadays, Skylanders is nothing. There haven't been any new releases in 7 years, and the two most recent games aren't exactly blockbusters. But didn't stop the series from amassing a serious following, making around 550 million by the end of the series, making the childhoods of many like me. How do I transition this back into the challenge? How about I just run it back? Anyone remember this game from your childhood? I'm certain you had good memories of playing this when you were young with your siblings. Seeing how many characters you can collect, breaking your Flashwing figurine for the 17th time, playing top trumps with the Skylanders cards that come with the character packs. I don't think Activision intended this. Seeing how far you can get in each level before losing all your Skylanders. Having your Warnado Skylander mysteriously disappear from your Skylanders portal when you left to go to the toilet, and then have your parents fish out of the attic 8 years later somehow, and seeing how high of a difficulty you can go. And speaking of difficulty is the theme of the video. And to put simply, Giants is actually quite hard. Giants and all other Skylanders titles onwards have a nightmare difficulty, and Giants is largely regarded as the hardest one in the series. To put simply, enemies have health in the thousands, most enemies nuke your health bar with a single hit because why not, and you'd be surprised how many enemies have hitboxes on literally anything they do. Don't you love it when you die because the enemy turned around? Not just that, the enemies that you encounter are quite scary in their own right already, so amplifying their damage and health just makes already hard encounters an abysmal experience. But where's the difficulty, you might ask? Can't you just use a maxed out Drobot and swap to other really strong Skylanders when you're low? Yeah, but that would just be cheap. So instead, this video will be me playing on Nightmare difficulty using just one Skylander that starts at level 1. So let's go over the rules first. Firstly, I can only use one Skylander. I'll be doing 3 playthroughs, one playthrough with Drill Sergeant, another playthrough with Prison Break, and a final with Sprocket. They'll all be fresh saves, so no Luckatron wheels and no Wing Sapphires to make the early game a breeze. I'll have to go find them out in the levels myself. And most importantly, no using other Skylanders. The only time where I can change my Skylander is to open elemental gates or swap to Giants for feats of strength, but I can't swap Skylanders in the middle of combat and use them for combat. Bugs and exploits are also not allowed either for 2 reasons. Firstly, they can skip segments and make them easy, and second of all, I don't know how to do them. Now here's where the tier list aspect comes into play. We're going to play through each level and look at each enemy shown, and give them a tier on how hard they are to deal with. Enemies in the B to S tier are hard to extremely deadly enemies, and enemies in C to F tier are occasional threats or just piss easy. Then we move to the next level and rank the enemies there. Any returning enemies from previous levels will have their ranks changed if they become harder or easier to deal with in those newer levels. But how will we rank them? The ranking will be based on where they spawn, how much they spawn, how much damage they deal, and how they damage you. So as a quick note, just because an enemy is big and strong doesn't make them immediately S tier if they spawn in a wide open area for you to dodge them, or they only have 1 to 2 spawns. So don't expect someone to have a high ranking just from looks alone. And you'll find that the highest ranking enemies on this list are quite common or uncommon enemies that either show up quite frequently or at least frequent enough to make a big impact. But enough talking, let's get to playing the game. Oh yeah, a quick note, I'll also be using terms like brawler, support, tank, glass cannon. If you want a quick generalization on what those prefixes are, then here you go. Feel free to pause. Right, so quick intermission. I found this out partway through making the script and experimenting, but it turns out enemies deal more damage the further in the game you go. So for example, the Bark Demons, which are an enemy you find in the 2nd level, they deal 110 damage to their melee attack, but as it turns out later in the game, that melee damage goes up to 460. So in other words, returning enemies will get stronger than the previous appearances in previous levels. So that's a little fun thing about Nightmare difficulty. Actually, I don't think enemies dealing more damage the later levels you go is Nightmare specific. I think that's just something that happens in the game normally, but Nightmare just makes it worse with all damage being amplified by a ton. Chapter 1, Time with the Giants. Before we do anything, swap to a giant and grab this Sneaky Wing Sapphire over here. We're gonna need it for upgrades. Overall, this level isn't that hard. It is a tutorial level after all. So after some block puzzles and some treasure chests, we find our first enemy, the Bone Chompy Dead. Next, we're introduced to what the giants are capable of. Since they are the main gimmick of the game and also in the title, thankfully you don't need them to progress with the game, so if you don't have a giant you're not locked behind a paywall, but I am still going to use them to siphon money from the soul gem up here and the sneaky chest in the corner. Also, if you do the leap of faith, instead of going through the hole that Gigantus made, you'll be dropped down next to a treasure chest instead of being dropped directly into the Chompy Pit. Also, speaking of that Chompy Pit, we fight a bunch of Chompies. After committing vehicular manslaughter on these Chompies, we fight our next real enemy, the Archean Jouster. The Jouster will drop down to fight you. Jousters are easy to avoid, but they do deal a lot of damage, especially given our current health right now. Unlike Chompies, they also don't die in one hit, so you're gonna have to take time to kill them instead of just bulldozing over them. Unfortunately for him, we have the power of knockback on our side. Anyways, after we do some parkour, we remove this stone to go back into the Chompy Pit. Repeat this 2 more times and you'll get a free Electrotronomy. Extra XP isn't really that much, but it will compound over time. Next, let's go back to playing wrong another detour, this time an Elemental Gate. When in these Elemental Gates, any Skylander with the specific element will be given more damage and health regen. Each Elemental Gate provides hats, and hats are useful getting extra stats. But before I get this hat, let me waste my time trying to use Drill Sergeant's dumbass homing missiles on this route runner. Oh right, I should probably talk about how Drill Sergeant works. Drill Sergeant is a fast but low damage character. His main attack is the drill rockets. They'll deal 10 damage and 14 damage with the upgrade, and they'll home into the enemy, which can allow you to hit enemies from weird angles or hit enemies that are above you. They can follow enemies that teleport, or the missiles will just do whatever the f this is. You need to wait for both missiles to recharge before you can fire it again. If you're close to an enemy or destructible object like a vase, he'll do a melee attack that deals 7 damage. This melee attack sucks, by the way. His first ability is the Charge. Quick burst of speed that lasts around 2 seconds when upgraded. This dash also deals damage and pushes enemies away. His second ability is his actual primary weapon, it's the Laser Blaster. We haven't unlocked that yet, so no. Overall, Drill Sergeant is a fast and evasive character that has low damage but quick speed. His homing missiles can make it easier to hit enemies, especially ones that are above them, that or they do whatever the fuck this is. Anyways, back to our playthrough. After we eventually kill the Root Runner, we grab our first hat. It's got low stats unfortunately, and they're not really that good stats anyways, but it's better than nothing. Now we can move on to take down the Concatron. Except not really, let's go to the wind area this time. This is actually the hardest part of the mission, it's because of these spitting jets of air. Spitting blades like these are quite common throughout the game, especially in elemental areas. They deal a lot of damage and it's very easy to accidentally hit one. Anyways, if you make it past it, we get our next hat, the Turban. This gives us armor, which is really good, so wear this until level 5. Now back on track. After we break those chains that keep the Concatron up, we get strewn through a battle that is really tense and really dangerous, and the giant robot is unable to hit us. After some block puzzles, Chompies and Jousters, we go to break the other chains. This is what I would have said if there wasn't an Elemental Gate over here. There's a little bit of health over here, so if you end up getting hit by the Jousters, which you shouldn't, you can heal up a little. If you drop down here, you'll find a legendary treasure. Legendary treasures are really useful, because they give you 100 gold for free. And money is money, and money is useful. Walking down here, we'll find the hardest fight of the level, which isn't that hard. A couple Zombies and some Jousters. You can spam out one of the Jousters with a missile to only fight one at a time, but if you don't want to do that, you can just run in and dash through all of them.
Your attempt to destroy me is completely unauthorized.
Now we're in the final arena. This one involves a lot of waiting since the Concatron will be firing lasers everywhere and you need to wait for him to laser all the rocks off of the final chain to break it. You might be standing in the wrong place at the wrong time and you might eat a whole 20 damage, which isn't much. Anyways, when he's finally lasered all the rocks off the chain, you can break the chain, and that's Time of the Giants dealt with. And now off to the ranking. Only 2 enemies show up in this mission. Root runners don't count. Chompies will start off in F tier. Your crowd control capabilities aren't the greatest right now, but even then they still shouldn't get a hit on you anyways. Your charge is perfect for killing hordes of them. Archean Jousters are fairly big dudes with quite a fair bit of health. They deal a lot of damage, but they're also easily avoidable and spammable with knockback missiles. D tier. They can delete most of your health with a single hit, especially given how low your health is right now, but that's if they get a hit. Overall, the first level isn't that hard, which does make sense. It is the tutorial. Level 2. Things get a little serious, but only a little. Before you do anything, you best check your upgrades. I decided I'd like to save up my money for the laser blaster since the laser blaster is really powerful. The first encounter starts off with a couple of chompies being spawned from a root runner. You have access to bombs to nuke all of them. After some more demolition, chompies and stone pushing, we get to the first real threat, the Drow Lancemasters. They're enemies that deal almost 200 damage with an overhead strike. Their attack is easy to dodge, slow and telegraphed. You can avoid them by moving to the left or the right. And if you hit them hard enough or enough times, they'll get staggered out of their attack. But right now, we don't really have anything to challenge their attack, so we best sling the bombs at them. After that, we get the jukebox, and we're then challenged by a bark demon the moment we land back on land. Tanky, long range, high damage, this battle really shows you how little damage you really deal as Drill Sergeant, especially early on in the game, which is a really bad thing by the way. Because although Drill Sergeant is quite evasive, longer fights means more time to make mistakes and get hit, and hits can deal almost all of your health, and that's a bad thing. So you best avoid their attacks as best as you can, and also get ready to hunker down for a long fight, because these are going to be long fights. Bark demons have 2 attacks. A projectile that crawls towards you before striking for moderate damage, and a melee attack with a very janky hitbox. As I mean janky, I mean you can literally get hit by it from behind. The next encounter has Drow Lancemasters, Bark Demons, and a Root Runner. This is where you learn that Bark Demons have the ability to eat chompies and heal off of them. This seems like a bad thing at first, but this is actually a blessing in disguise, since a Bark Demon is locked into a long animation while eating the chompies, and once it's done, the Root Runner has already spawned another chompy, forcing the Bark Demon to eat it again. This means the Bark Demon can be killed without it fighting back since it's too busy chomping the chompies. Although yes, it will take longer to kill them because of this, but I'd rather fight a Bark Demon that's stuck in health regen purgatory than a Bark Demon that can actually fight back. So be sure to not take out the Root Runners first. Afterwards, we are introduced to our next opponent, the Drow Archer. These are ranged units, mostly hiding in spots we can't hit until we take out the Lancers. They fire 3 arrows into the air, and then those arrows will rain down upon you, with 1 arrow landing on top of you and 2 others landing in a random area around you. They usually spawn in groups of 2 to 3, and they aren't that difficult. Just keep moving and you won't be hit by the arrows, but do keep an eye out for those 2 random arrows as they might be in the direction that you're dodging in. And also do be aware that they also have a melee attack. It only does 50 to 60 damage, but it can still catch you out if you're not ready, because why would they have a melee attack? They're a persistent threat throughout the early game before being replaced with more potent ranged supports. So take out the Lancers first and they'll drop down to fight you. But you can actually use the homing ability on your missiles to hit them from above. This is a trick that's very useful in fights where there are rangers in a spot where you wouldn't be able to hit them normally, but you can end up knocking them out by either hitting them off the edge, or at least just dealing enough chip damage to kill them. This is really useful given how dangerous they and other ranged supports can be in certain fights. I'm having too much fun with this part of my keyboard. In the next area, we'll be able to get this key from the house, but after you get the key from the house, you'll be met with chompies, bark demons, archers, and lancers. This battle can be quite a problem if the RNG and the Drow archers don't like you, but if you keep moving, you'll be safe. And hell, sometimes the bark demon will kill the lancers for you. Knock out the bark demon and take out the archers. Don't get meleeed. Feed a shrink for free money, grab the second key, open the gate and talk to Orc. Next, we need a compass before we can finish this level. Before you leave, be sure to listen to this glorious line before you leave.
So the onboard nav system now says we're in some place called Albuquerque. We're definitely gonna need that compass.
Next fight is a tricky one. Don't forget to buy an upgrade if you can. I can't. 2 bark demons, a root runner to heal, and archers in the back who are sniping you. Now this seems like a terrible situation, but the root runner actually comes in clutch here, keeping the 2 barks busy, and this is also where I learned about the fact that you can actually abuse the root runner to force the barks to stop attacking. As before, I was just gunning them down without thinking. And so now in any playthroughs I do afterwards, I would just use the root runners to let me beat the shit out of the barks with no resistance. But for some reason, when you kill 1 bark demon, the root runner just stops spawning chompies. This is bad because the bark demon's traveling projectile combined with the draw archers arches? Yes, that's a word. F you. This makes this quite hard since the bark demon's traveling projectiles combined with the bow barkers. This is bad because the bark demon's traveling projectiles combined with the draw archer's arrows makes this quite hard as your movement is limited by both the thin platform you're on, the arrow RNG, plus the root runner's projectile can catch you out sometimes. Once those bark demons are dead, we get to finally fight those archers who are swinging arrows at us. Except not really, we got a couple lancers dropping in to fight. Because this game comes from the early 2010s, we need to do a turret section. That lasts 3 seconds. That's what I would have said if I didn't go into this elemental gate to get money. Alright, now we do it. Sick. Moving on, we have to shut up for 70! Up here is another turret section. Well, at least this one has a bit more interactivity. Since you can actually stop the archers from spawning if you shoot this building over here. And if you shoot the lighthouse off to the side, you actually get a Luckatron wheel from this building. More specifically, this is a Luckatron wheel of health, which is actually really good. We want the Luckatron wheels of health over every other Luckatron wheel type. If you don't know what it does, it gives the enemies a higher chance to drop health upon death, which is really useful. More health is better, and keeping topped up can save you from certain enemies that will deal most of your health bar. Okay, turns out I don't have anything to do with the tier list written for level 2 on my script, so I'm just gonna have to improvise this. Bone chompies stay in F tier, they're just chompies. Lance maskers. They have masks. Wait, do they have masks in the design? Let's check. Well, the armored ones do. Wait, no, they are wearing hoods. Draw Lance Masters are quite easily avoided. They don't really spawn that much, and they don't really spawn in tight areas where it's hard to avoid them. Your bulldoze charge can stagger them and knock them back, and it could also get you out of a bad situation. They shouldn't be that hard to deal with right now, given how little they spawn. C tier. Draw archers are fairly common range support units. They deal a lot of damage to their arrows, and the RNG on the 2 random arrows can be quite punishing if RNG doesn't like you. Keep an eye out for them, because they can mess you up if you're not ready. Plus, they also got a melee attack to catch you off guard. Also C tier. B for Bark Demon. They have a ranged attack, which is what you're primarily going to be dodging. It covers quite a lot of space and can really deny you a lot of area, which certainly isn't that good when you're also having to dodge Joe Archer's arrows. Thankfully, they have one big counter. The enemy that's supposed to help them. Root runners do quite well at keeping them in place, and therefore bark demons aren't really that difficult. But in the few instances where the bark demon doesn't have a root runner, either because it didn't spawn with one or I was dumb enough to kill it before attacking the bark demon, then they actually are quite a serious threat. Also, watch out for that melee attack. It's stupidly weird of its hitbox. Like, what the fuck is this? Once we get the compass, we can actually go and roam the hub world. Have a look around, break all the boxes. Go to the Luckatron machine and set the Luckatron wheels. Go to the game room, buy another Luckatron slot so you can use another Luckatron wheel. While you're here, you best buy some upgrades, since this next level is going to be a hard one. Rumbletown is next in line and is one of the biggest reality checks in the game. If you're going to play Nightmare mode, just know that every level that is a factor of 3 is a difficulty spike. Levels 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 are all serious major spikes in difficulty, although 6 is debatable. This level starts off by giving you the iconic regular Chompy. Going up the ramp and we find the armored Lance Masters, who runs away. Catching up to him, there's no real difference between them and other Lancers except them having more health, which is dangerous in its own right, but not really much more dangerous. And they can still be stun locked by your laser blaster, except I still wouldn't really depend on the laser blaster staggering them with your life, as they can still potentially get a hit in before the laser staggers them. Grab the key, fight more fodder, and move up to an actual fight. But first, come down to this cave for a quick wheel of strength. After that's done, we get to fight the life spell punks. These are support units that heal certain enemies in a radius for 40 health each. Given that our damage is quite low so far, enemies can be reliably out-healed by those. Given that our damage output right now is extremely low, they can reliably out-heal your damage output, so killing enemies becomes impossible with them around. So focus the life spell punks down before taking out the Lancers. After that encounter, we take a quick deviation to the life elemental area. Here we find our first ambush. Ambushes are dangerous. They're both fighting the Skylanders you play as, but they're now enemies. All is well and good until you realize there's a massive discrepancy between Skylander and enemies' balance. Since your Skylanders are built for things like crowd control and sniping enemies from afar, and so these encounters are quite dangerous as their attacks are quite hard to deal with and, to put simply, bullshit. Thankfully, the ambush target that we have to deal with right now is Stealth Elf. Their attack is quite straightforward. They run at you in a straight line, and once they reach you, they'll lunge forward, slicing for about 250 damage each. If your character has no mobility, then this can be quite difficult to deal with. Thankfully, we are playing Joe Sargent after all. But not only that, but their attacks can get more out of sync the further the fight goes on for. So if you're not ready to dodge one way and then immediately another, you're just going to get slapped in the face with about 60% of your health suddenly disappearing. Not the worst, since upon death they guaranteed to drop health. That is not how grammar works me. Since upon death, they are guaranteed to drop health, which makes the damage they deal less problematic, since you get a fair bit of the health loss back once you're done. I'm not going to bother ranking them on the list, by the way. As for how the fight goes, it's quite simple really. Your mobility keeps you quite safe, while your laser blaster can pick them off from afar. Focus on dodging. Plus, your missiles and homing abilities can also help you as you're focusing on dodging, as they can sometimes land hits they really shouldn't thanks to that homing attack. And although they can teleport behind you, it takes around 2 to 3 seconds for them to actually attack after teleporting. Which means if you keep an eye out for where they teleport, you can get yourself ready for when they eventually lunge at you. After this encounter is done, we move on to finish the elemental area. There isn't really much here else worth talking about beyond the Winged Sapphire, and by the way, I haven't talked about Winged Sapphires yet. They give you a 2% discount on upgrades, which means they're really useful early on, since although 2% isn't much overall, it very much compounds the more you get throughout the game. Back on track, we got an encounter with the Armored Lancers and some Drow Archers, but if you take a look to the right over here, we got a bomb to throw at them. Use the bomb to kill or at least weaken some of them before you challenge them to a fight. You can use the bounce pad over here to get yourself a slightly better angle for throwing. After brawling in the mosh pit for a while, we get introduced to the best character in the game. Do you know who it is? Because if you don't, then that's a
Wrong answer, pal! I'm Brock, and you're in Brockstown now!
Continuing the fight, be sure to not get cornered by the Lancers. If you are about to, then try to charge through them as a last resort to interrupt their attacks and to break them apart. After some archers, we get to move on to nab some keys, bully some sheep, and enter the second life elemental area. Why are there 2 on this map? Money! Grab this key here, admire how smooth the frame rate here is too. Don't be an idiot and don't be cocky. And the moment we step outside from grabbing this key, a bunch of enemies will be outside. Be sure to kill the life spell point first, since killing the Drow Lancers will take a while if you don't. After you're done, be sure to go into this house with some health. Here's our first time lock puzzle, where you need to hit an orb to open a gate, but don't take too long. Off on this little tower here is a legendary treasure, so be sure to grab it for a free 100 gold. Deal the life spell punk and some archers, and we're off to fight Brock. Or not. Go down and you can get yourself some free money after doing some rock throwing. Or not. Go down and you can get yourself some free money after throwing some wood. In the next stone puzzle, there's some money we can grab. If you don't get the hint, we're going to need a lot of money. Especially early in the game. So get money. Now. Next encounter takes a while. Root runners are tanky and archers force you to move away from the runners. Now before we could do the arena battle, let's go talk to Auric and get the fairy dust to buy an upgrade. We're gonna need all the help we need for this next encounter. And don't forget this giant drop for some extra cash. See, I told you we need money. This here's the first arena battle out of 3. They involve 3 waves and a fight with the arena master. Starts off easy with chompies, but then surrounds you with lancers. Keep moving, keep dodging, and you won't be sliced by the lancers. You can push enemies off the edge using your missiles and your charge abilities knockback. That, and you can also use the fire pit to kill enemies for you. This is quite useful given how low our damage output is, and especially a lot faster than actually killing them yourself. Brock's up next, and he has some weird properties compared to the Goliath drones we will fight later in the game. Firstly, you cannot hit him at all, even if his shield isn't raised, and you can only attack him while he's finished charging. Plus, you can interrupt his charge, which makes it so that you have to bait him into charging again and not interrupting him. You do want to kill him quick as healers and archers will show up consistently. Take him out, grab the hermit, and that's Rumbletown defeated. For the ranking side of things, Chompy, although are more iconic than Bone Chompies, aren't any more deadly, F tier. Armored Drow Lancemasters are slightly more dangerous, mostly due to having more health. But other than that, aren't that much more of a bigger deal, but they're still going in B tier anyways. Goliath Drows are large tanky units that can charge at you quickly. They're easy to dodge, but if you get cornered or hit by the janky hitboxes, they can be quite dangerous. C tier, since all you got is Brock and he's quite annoying due to those weird properties he's got. Life spell punks are healing support units that heal the enemy for 40 health each. This is a problem since basically they have more heals per second than your damage per second right now. And so they need to be knocked out first since I don't think you can actually out damage them at this point in the game. C tier. If you got money left over, then you should start buying more upgrades. And hopefully you should be able to choose your own path now. Personally, I enjoyed the bottom upgrade path a lot better since a better charge and an auto blaster that's actually viable is a yes in my book. Cutthroat Carnival is up, and this is where Skystones is introduced. There's some money to grab immediately. Go into this little room for a chest, and let's skip to the next encounter. Well, the first encounter actually. It's time to fight Mohawk Cyclopses. Melee units with low health and moderate damage that become immune to damage while attacking. This attack being the iconic spin move. They spin in a random direction. This is bad because when they are spinning, you can't do anything to stop it. And when there are multiple of these spinning at once, you can get cornered very easily, and there's no way to stop the swarm of Beyblades surrounding you. Armored Chompy. Dead. They're just Chompies that can take 10 damage before becoming a one-shot. They're still useless. But hey, I guess taking 2 hits to kill is better than taking 1 hit to kill. Still a Chompy though. Moving on, we get to play our first Skystones match. This one is easy, he uses nothing but spiderlings. You should get a 7-2 every time. Once we leave after grabbing the key, we are confronted by a Goliath Drow. This time, this one doesn't get staggered by everything. There's some Drow archers supporting in the back, so just dance around him and you'll be fine. Don't get hit by the archers though. Take out the Chompy, and now it's time for Armor Hell. Mohawk Cyclopses and 3 Goliaths. Dance around them, don't get hit, abuse the knockback sending them back, and you should be fine hopefully. Although this fight will take a while, just watch out for those hitboxes though. Once the encounter is over, you can either pull this ship with a giant, or go talk to this guy to have him pull it for you after doing a game of Skystones. Personally, I like doing the Skystones option because more Skystones is better. But first, before we do that, grab this soul gem out here that's not even bothering to hide. Grab this winged sapphire and... why is there an air gate over here? Whatever. Fight chance, win against chance. and get another Skystone for free. Fire the cannons, take this money, kill some mohawks, and push a cannon. More Skystones. And also complain about the fact that all these pieces of dialogue are all unskippable. Why are they all unskippable? Now we got executioners. They're tough cookies who toss their axe from afar and spin themselves to a different point up close. Watch out for their axe throws and remember that they teleport when they do their melee attack. However, this actually works in our favor as they can deal friendly fire and kill each other, so use this ability to weaken other executioners and kill the drill archers. Let's take a quick detour to the undead gate and regret it since it's nothing but spinning blades. Kill some mohawks and some archers and Callie will let you grab a key, but let's go talk to Auric real quick and buy some Skystones. Plus, we also got a legendary treasure to pillage money from. Next encounter is dangerous. Collide some mohawks in a small area where you can barely move and it can be very lethal. This small ass arena, and you can die here quite quickly and easily. Don't run into the axes and you can take out the Goliath on his own. You can infinitely loop him if you keep running around him tight enough. Since I died here, I might as well check the upgrades I can get. And at this point you should probably have enough money to buy one of the upgrade paths. I went with the auto laser buff since 2x fire rate is crazy good for stun locking and DPS, and turns drill sergeant's damage from minimal to moderate, as your passive damage output goes from really bad to being doubled as much, and you can focus even more on dodging. Your dash ability can be really useful now as your auto laser basically does all of your damage in the background. Yes, it does take a while to kill enemies with, but even though our damage output has been upped a little bit, it still takes a while to kill enemies, and that's still bad because once again, longer fights means more times to make mistake, and more time to make mistakes is a bad thing because Nightmare Mode capitalizes on mistakes. It's like baseball, but instead of having 3 strikes and you're out, you're lucky to get even 2. If you didn't get cornered and juggled, grab the key and it's off to Dreadbeard. Executioners, Mohawks, Drill Archers, and Goliaths. This is a fairly large area, and you get a lot of room to dodge the axes and Goliaths. Just don't die.
Skystones!
Skystones.
Yar! Water Ridge!
Yeah, right. Shut up, lovers. For the rankings, armored chompies are easily killed. They may have 10 more health worth of armor, letting them take at least 2 hits, but that doesn't really mean much given that they're still chompies. F tier. Mohawk Cyclops are low health units that spin around in random directions to attack. They can be very deadly given the fact that they are invincible while spinning. And when they start, you can't really stop them without getting hit. Stay back, shoot them before they get close, and you should be fine. In small limited spaces, they are a killer. They will corner you and you can't stop them from doing it, especially once they start spinning. Wait for their attack to stop since their invulnerability will prevent any attempts to stop them. C tier. They aren't that common yet, though the encounter with the Goliath before you get the key is by far the most dangerous one in the entire level. Goliaths are quite a lot more common now, and the areas you fight them in are sometimes quite small. They can mess you up. Therefore, they'll be up to B tier. Executioners are tough, and their axe throws can snipe you. They appear in small areas too, but thankfully you can abuse the friendly fire from their melee attack and have them cleave other enemies for you, and you can finish them off once they're weak. B tier because of the axe throw alone. And that will be it for Drill Sergeants Part 1 of 4. Tune in for the remaining episodes, and when that's done, we'll be moving on to Prison Break and Sprocket.